Hello, in this video I want to talk about parental alienation to help you and your children understand the process, recognise the signs and understand how it can affect you. Also to help you recognise what's happening to you and enable you to start taking back some control over your life whilst you learn some tools to heal on a deeper level. Hello, welcome to the Divorce Sanctuary. My name's Elizabeth Goddard. I'm author of Finding Lily and the A to Z of emotional abuse. On this channel I talk about healing from emotional abuse, divorcing emotionally from the abuser as well as physically. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe, and if you're returning, welcome back and thank you. Parental alienation occurs when one parent, whether it's deliberate or otherwise, turns a child or children against the other. Make sure you stay until the end, as I will share with you 12 ways that might help you turn the whole situation around. I'm sure some form of parental alienation happens in the breakdown of relationships, but I really do believe it's going to be more prevalent in marriages where one parent is higher up the narcissistic spectrum. And obviously, when that marriage dissolves or crumbles due to the weak foundations, you can't walk away if you have children. They continue to play their games. Parental alienation occurs where one person, whether deliberately or otherwise, turns a child against the other parent. Parental alienation is regarded as a form of psychological abuse, and the effects on a child can be devastating. The harm caused to children by alienating them from the other parent. Psychotherapist Richard Hogan says it's absolute and catastrophic for the psyche of the young child's mind as they're coerced into alienating their once loved mother or father. Alienating behaviours present themselves on a spectrum with varying impact on individual children. Parental alienation syndrome refers to the psychological manipulation of a child by an alienating parent, the narcissistic parent. Behaviours and indicators may include one parent constantly bad-mouthing or belittling the other, or limiting contact. It might be forbidding discussion about them or manipulating the children to believe the other parent dislikes or does not love that child. And these tactics give the belief that the alienated parent is dangerous or unworthy. Children may adapt their own behaviours and feelings to the alienating parent to ensure that their attachment needs are met. Baker 2010, and that's from the CAFCAS, the Children and Family Court Advisory Support Service. Such manipulation of a child is a form of emotional abuse, causing long-term emotional harm if the behaviour is not challenged. Parental alienation comes from the term parental alienation syndrome, coined by child psychiatrist Richard Garner in 1985. He describes it as a disturbance in which a child is obsessed with the deprecation and criticism of a parent, denigration that is unjustified and or exaggerated, because of one's parents' conscious, subconscious or unconscious behaviours that affect the child's perception. The manipulation typically results in the child's rejection, disdain and lack of empathy towards the other parent. And as you might be discovering, this wasn't a relationship, you lived in a war zone, and now as you enter the divorce system, you're going into battle. But parent alienation takes this even further. You may want to co-parent, but their behaviour makes it impossible, and you may find yourself firefighting or reacting to their demands, false accounts of you, their flying monkeys, their smear campaigns. And if that isn't bad enough, your children are then used to hurt you. You may want to behave fairly and recognise that the children should see their other parent, knowing that this means inevitably that they remain in contact with you. Perhaps you've been going through counselling with them and they were able to manipulate the process, and you're crazy. They can't live with you. You have the problem. Unable to take responsibility for anything, they project everything onto you. They've used techniques like gaslighting to convince you that this was your fault. You yourself may have experienced alienation during the relationship. A lot of people I work with coming out of these relationships have been left realizing they have no support network. And as you're picking up the pieces of the relationship, something else that you might have to deal with is parental alienation. And you yourself might have experienced the adult version, but now they're subjecting your children to their own version of the game. They use things that have a high value to you in order to hurt you. But unlike material objects, how do you try and not show interest in your own children in hope that the abuser gets bored and moves on? You can't. You might wonder where the fairness in this is. You can't negotiate, you can't reason, and somehow they seem to manipulate everyone in this process. They play the victim, and if they press the right buttons, you'll react for everyone to see. Dealing with parental alienation isn't easy. It can be exceedingly painful when your children resist your attempts to connect, or they view you as the bad parent. This abuse is on a spectrum. Some will experience this in the form of their child hearing the other parent being bad-mouthed or belittling, or a form of triangulation is used. At the other end of the spectrum, the parent loses their child physically, and as with every level, this form of abuse, the child is lost emotionally. And you're now faced with a dilemma. You can see them as toxic, and you're starting to see their behaviour as abuse, but you're expected to hand your child or your children over to them. Like everything in the abuser's life, it has no feelings. It is a thing. It has a use. Just like a washing machine or a dishwasher or a kettle, when it stops working or when it stops performing in the way it used to, it gets discarded. It's on the rubbish tip. Its performance might be okay, but a new model comes out and they need the next new shiny upgrade. Children are no different. They have a use. They have a purpose. Their purpose might be supply of attention. It might be in the form of control, making the abuser feel powerful. It might be in a way of the golden child, where they gain fuel or supply from the bragging rights created by the child. It might be in the form of triangulation, where the child is made to feel guilty for wanting to spend time with the other parent, or jealousy is manufactured by the abusive parent. They create confusion with the child's emotions, creating scenarios where they're made to feel guilty or eroding their confidence should they speak out to protect the other parent. And the damaged inner child that kept you trapped for so long is used on your own children. Your children are used like pawns in a chess game, everyone having a role and a value. Some of the abusers will become bored with the interaction, but others will see more value in their children and more games that they can play. They're not interested in their child's emotional needs or their education or their financial security or their spiritual or physical needs. They put on a show. They play the role of doting parent, but it's all part of an exchange, and the aim is to hurt, infuriate and punish you. Any attempt to stop or reduce the abuser from seeing their children is seen as a threat to their power, and they don't care if you're right in allowing them limited access. They don't actually want to spend time with their children anyway, but they know how much it upsets you. If your children start to dislike you, they will encourage them to do so. The evil ones will not just stop at that. They will be intent on destroying you and your relationship with your children in the same way that they did with you, your friends and your family. And the really evil ones will not just stop at destroying you and your relationships with the children. They will want to punish you by taking your children, or even better, creating an environment where your children will want to stay with them. Nothing they do will be for the benefit of the children. Nothing. If you suspect parental alienation is happening, it's really important if you can intervene as early as possible before the alienating parent and the child become entrenched. There are 17 primary parental alienation strategies that have been identified through research studies with adults who were alienated as children. These 17 parental alienation strategies have been validated in a series of subsequent studies. The 17 strategies fall into 5 general categories. The first one is poisonous messages to the child about the targeted parent, in which he or she is portrayed as unloving, unsafe, unavailable. The second one is limiting contact and communication between the child and the targeted parent. Number 3 is erasing and replacing the targeted parent in the heart and mind of the child. The fourth one is encouraging the child to betray the targeted parent's trust. And number 5 is undermining the authority of the targeted parent. Taken together, these parental alienation strategies foster conflict and psychological distance between the child and the targeted parent. Not all children who are exposed to these parental alienation strategies actually succumb and become alienated. Some are able to resist the pressure. Children who reject one parent to please another are referred to as alienated or having the parental alienation syndrome. These relationships are conditional. The child is rewarded for being disrespectful or rude or judgmental, condescending, even hateful. And they too end up walking on eggshells in an attempt to protect their role in the relationship dynamics. The children develop a toxic bond to the alienating parent as they too are manipulated into fearing abandonment. Just like the emotional abusers' enablers, their own children believe they're benefiting and that they have an important role. They believe the fake future that is promised. They too are manipulated and are being used in the abuser's mind games. Their sense of self could be questioned, especially if they identify with the rejected parent, with similar likes, dislikes, similar habits or features. If you're experiencing parental alienation, here are a few suggestions that might help you. Be proactive. Do not believe this problem will go away on its own. Be honest with yourself about the alienating parent. Set firm boundaries. The abuser will encourage the children to be disrespectful. They're going to be confused. Find a way to connect with your children every day, whether you call them, text them, talk to them, minimize the interaction you have with the abuser. Establish a system for messages that can be sent by email or text. Let any phone calls go to voicemail. Do not confront your abuser. If you believe they're coercing your child, start keeping records and then present it to your legal team. Respond, don't react. Remove any emotion from your message. Never reply straight away, particularly if you've been triggered by that message. Create a safe space for your children to detox after a visit with the abuser and allow them the time to acclimatise back into your environment. Don't question your children or create a situation where you're behaving in a similar way to the abuser. Remember, you have a duty of care towards your children. Interview your legal team and make sure they've experienced dealing with a person with a borderline personality disorder. Although you can't label them if there's no diagnosis, it's a term that will help them understand the level of manipulation that's likely to take place. Ask them for examples. Ask them what they do in certain circumstances, if they sit on paperwork or they hide information. Create documents, keep messages, emails, journals or diaries. Record how your child is or your children behave when they come back from a visitation and what they like before they leave. You know more than you think you know. If you look back to your relationship with the abuser, they have shown you their preferred tools of abuse. they might amplify them or tweak them now. If gaslighting was something that they enjoyed, keep a record or ask them to put everything in writing via an app or via email. Low-level alienation is horrific for both parent and child. High-level alienation is where the parent is no longer in the child's life. Remember, the abuser is always looking for a reaction. Their damaged inner child dictates how this is executed. It is vitally important to divorce emotionally from the abuser. Being in a place where you can respond to them and stick to the boundaries is so empowering. The abuser is threatened by you and will be very reluctant to allow you the power and control they stole from you. During the cycle of abuse, they learned about your likes and your dislikes. They will use this now, and they will use the children to carry out the abuse. Please demonstrate unconditional love. Your children are going to experience everything conditionally. The abuser is looking for a reaction. Being in a place where you can respond to them and stick to your boundaries is going to be so empowering. I hope you found this useful. If you'd like to find out more ways of working with me, the link to my website is below. I'm sending you loads and loads of love.